a motion, and he wanted a bipartisan committee to be set up to probe the expenditure of governments with regards to COVID-19. In fact, when he moved the motion, it was admitted by the Speaker of Parliament, Right Honorable Alban Bagbin. But on Wednesday, he was absent from Parliament, and interestingly, we had the first Deputy Speaker in his stead. And he gave a reason why it was even wrong in the first place for that motion to be admitted, citing the Constitution 187 as the reason why he was going to now overturn that ruling by the Speaker. The Speaker returned to Parliament, and yesterday he was not happy at all. He was frothing at the mouth just because he said it was unconstitutional, it was illegal for the first Deputy Speaker to overturn this motion or this ruling that he had given. And in fact, he was going to allow both sides to rely on the Constitution to go ahead and see what they can do about the situation. So let's take a look at what the first Deputy Speaker said with regards to overturning the ruling. We'll take a look at what the Majority Leader, Deputy Majority Leader in Parliament had to say. The Minority Leader also spoke, and then what the Speaker also said about this. Take a look.
Is that this motion ought not to have been admitted and is improperly before the House. Also,
is happening in this Parliament.
What the Nana Addo Dankwa government have done through its leadership in Parliament is to throw our quest and desire as a people for an open, transparent and accountable government to the dogs and to the winds. And the precedent that is being set, I worry for the future of our Parliament. And I worry for the future of any parliamentary committee tomorrow that will be seeking under Article 1033 of the 1992 Constitution to inquire into any matter of public interest. Our motion was a very simple one, admitted by the Speaker and dismissed by the Deputy Speaker. Interesting times in Ghana. So you see sometimes what invite chaos into the chamber. A motion admitted, advertised over a month by the Speaker. A Deputy Speaker presiding to serve nothing but a narrow partisan interest, even after the motion is moved and seconded, dismisses the motion that it ought not to have been admitted. I hope that he is not impugning the authority and integrity of the Speaker, neither is he undermining the mandate and authority of the Speaker as a subordinate. I will comment on that matter at a future date.
The Parliament we are in has never been in Ghana, even Gold Coast. This is a different type of Parliament. We must be prepared to change.
He noted a meeting with his deputies will seek to ensure the trend is halted.
Another issue that requires addressing is the decision of the first Deputy Speaker to upend my admission of the motion and rule that the motion should not have been admitted in the first place. It is interesting to note that this is the second time the first Deputy Speaker has taken the chair and has made a ruling which in fact was to overrule a position I had earlier on established before the House. The penchant of the first Deputy Speaker to overrule my rulings is, to say the least, unconstitutional, illegal and offensive. The Deputy Speakers and I would deliberate on how to present a more coherent and uniform structure.
Being overly partisan is part of their preparation towards 2024 and decreting a certain scorpion on a shivling, and that we will not entertain. Democracy respects rule of law and due process. That is the only way democratic principles can be sustained. We can't do it haphazardly. We can't do it as and when it pleases us and as and when it suits us. So to us, everything about public expenditure is a matter of public record. This house approved certain facilities. This house mandated government to spend certain monies. There is no way in this day and age.
Right, and so that's the back and forth between the minority and the majority. But of course, from the Speaker, he says that that decision by the First Deputy Speaker to overturn the ruling on, the request by the minority to have a bipartisan probe into the expenditure of COVID-19 finances, that was unconstitutional, it was illegal and offensive. Joining me in the studios this morning, I have lawyer Joyce Ba Mokhtari. She is a special aide to former President John Dramani Mahama and also a former Deputy Minister of Transport. Good morning. Good morning. How are you doing?
Thank you.
You look good in red.
Okay, I'm trying to emulate.
Oh, I'm not in red today.
Oh yeah, close. But
I hope you're well.
Hang it in there.
Had a good week?
So far, so good.
All right. Well, joining us also in the studio, she's a member of the NPP communications team, Lorato Musa Saka. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
I guess they were all playing with colors. I see purple in yours, red, and then,
strong colors.
I know. How are you doing as well?
I'm good. How are you too?
I'm good. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us as well. And I'll start off with you because I'm not sure what you make of the speaker's, concern yesterday about the fact that this is the second time that the First Deputy Speaker has overturned a ruling that he's made. And in this particular instance, it is the fact that the minority wants a probe into the COVID-19 expenditure. And they're saying, let's set up a bipartisan committee. And the First Deputy Speaker said that was unconstitutional and so he could not grant it. Speaker is not happy about it. What do you say?
Well, good morning, Bella, and good morning to Sister Joyce.
I like how you said Sister Joyce.
Well, the Parliament of Ghana, as is constituted, is what represents all of us. If you don't vote for an MP from where you hail from, you definitely vote for an MP where you live. So we are represented there as people in that house. And this particular speaker, I think, has seen all the parliaments, from the first parliament to the 8th. He's been part of 1st to 7th, and now speaker for the 8th. So he has some level of experience and has a better understanding of how parliament operates. But parliament also operates within their own rules. And they even say they are masters of their own rules. Deputy Speaker has also been in the House for 3 terms, came in as an independent candidate in the 5th Parliament. Is it the 6th? Has been part of the 7th, has been part of the... And has been Deputy Speaker for the 2nd time. This is the 2nd time of being... occupying the position of First Deputy Speaker. So both of them come to the table with some level of experience, some understanding. And interestingly, they are both lawyers too. I think Speaker expressing what he felt and what he thinks. And he also was emphatic that he had already spoken to the Deputy Speaker about it. But I think what was interesting was whatever decision was taken was upheld. It wasn't, he didn't go against it. So I think
well, he said he won't go against it, but he'd rather give the minority the chance to also, take advantage of the Constitution. If they want to overturn that ruling, they can go ahead and
so there are rules that govern proceedings in Parliament. A motion was raised, it went through, there were arguments and counter-arguments. The Speaker sitting in the chair then, per his experience and understanding of their own rules, standing orders, and all the other procedures that governs their operations, came to a decision. And that is what stands now. They do it. But one of the things that was quite interesting to me was the Deputy Speaker's explanation that the Public Accounts Committee is responsible. And interestingly, the Public Accounts Committee is chaired by a member from the minority.
Yeah.
So it doesn't seem like government is influencing. It's bipartisan, all right, but it's chaired by, and we know how influential and how, for lack of a better expression, how chairpersons of committees in Parliament operate. We are not there. They are masters of their own rule. They govern themselves. And apart from raising those issues, the Speaker also raised other issues to do with conduct and other things. And
but even before
kind
we get
of
into
Parliament we have now. So I think that they are masters of their own rules.
But they are basing their arguments on the Constitution. And we heard from the first Deputy Speaker when he was presiding as Speaker, and he said that based on Article 187 of the Constitution, 6, I believe, you cannot set up another committee because there's already the Public Accounts Committee, and it's part of the Select Committee or the Standing Committee as well. But then Kaysel Atuforsen comes in and says that you're only hiding behind this to not account to the public for how you expended the COVID-19 funds, because Article 1033 of the Constitution also gives way for other committees to be set up. And let me just read it. He says that committees, or the Constitution says, committees of Parliament shall be charged with such functions, including the investigation and inquiry into the activities and administration of ministries and departments as Parliament may determine, and such investigation and inquiries may extend to proposals for legislation. He's saying that what he's asking for is not an audit, because then that justifies why the Auditor General has to do an audit, send it to the Public Accounts Committee so that it can be discussed and debated in Parliament. But in his case, he says, let's set up a committee to make an inquiry into this. That's totally different from having to wait till the Auditor General goes to the Public Accounts Committee.
But with your own submission here, you made it clear that they were arguing based on the Constitution. And the first Deputy Speaker's argument was also based on the Constitution. You get it? My understanding of what they do there, they understand their rules. But with respect to COVID expenditure, I'm trying to pull out a statement. Sometime in March 2021, Ministry of Finance released, I'm trying to pull the statement out, it's been difficult pulling it out, when there was a speculation that government has spent some 1.7 billion on COVID and all that. Ministry of Finance came out with a statement, it detailed some of these things. And the budget statements have
they've also
indicated how much was spent and how the breakdown was. There was even a lot of noise about how much was spent on food for the vulnerable. So this is something that has been done.
His success is not detailed, and that if you just state, and if we could just, I send that to the group, Daniel or Oliver, if you could just pull it up. So it says in the 2021 budget statement that there was some amounts that was spent on free electricity and free water. That was about 200 million Ghana cedis or so, yes. And then also provision of health infrastructure agenda 111, that came to about 36.14 million. So in fact, so provision for free water and electricity came to 143 million and 24 Ghana cedis. And it detailed it, but he says that there was no breakdown. So if you just show us what you've expended, it doesn't give details as to exactly how much and where it went to, because again, for the Finance Committee in Parliament, there were some agencies and some state institutions that came and said, well, this was how much we're supposed to receive for the COVID-19 funds. We did not receive the full amount, which is why they're asking.
So that means some level of work is already going on. With what you're showing, there's a breakdown in categorization of work. And when it comes to budgeting comes with items, right? There are budget lines. Those are the budget lines that are, what details does he want? What details does he want that the Public Accounts Committee cannot interrogate and get them? What details does he want that the Finance Committee can't go into it and get it? Why should a bipartisan committee be? Isn't the committees in Parliament not bipartisan? They're already bipartisan. And the Public Accounts Committee in particular is chaired by a member of the minority. So what else is there that, unless he has something contrary to what is being shared, he should let us know. But why would you want to insist on a bipartisan? And I don't think what the first deputy speaker said was, okay, he quoted sections of the Constitution.
The speaker said he was usurping his powers.
I mean, that's, and the speaker made it clear that he's had a conversation with his deputy on that before he left to board his flight or something like that, if I heard right. You know, Parliament is an institution that represents all of us. They've set the right committees to do that. I think we need to be able to ask them do the work that they are supposed to do. The speaker equally complained about committees not coming out with meetings and other things. What are they saying about those things? They are representatives. They are supposed to represent us and get whatever, protect whatever they have. And expenditure, how the funds were expended, has been provided. If you want details, what details can the Public Accounts Committee get? We watch the Public Accounts Committee hail everybody who is involved in anything to do with state funding, come to them and answer questions. People are surcharged, and these are based on the Auditor General's report. If it's wrong, let me know. But the Public Accounts Committee has been doing this over the years. At a point, we even had a backlog of audits. Now, I think it's only 1 year that is outstanding. The Public Accounts Committee has been doing it. So I'm wondering why they want, it's quite...
Do you think they're being partisan? Your deputy leader in Parliament says that they're just doing this because 2024 is around the corner and they're just trying to find a way to win votes.
Well, if he says so, he is in Parliament with them and knows what. But with what the Honourable, is it Ato Forsen,
yes,
going in on and about, I think he should know better. He's been a deputy finance minister before and knows how these things work.
What is not hiding behind all of this to avoid accounting to Ghanaians? Now, he says that back in 2020, when COVID had just struck, the finance minister came to Parliament, in fact, to the Finance Committee, and asked for some amount of money.
Yes.
They only approved 1.2 billion Ghana cedis, only to find out at the end of the year that about 8.1 billion Ghana cedis had already been spent on COVID-19. He refused to give an account of all that expenditure. They've been asking for it. In fact, as it stands now, about 10 billion Ghana cedis has already been expended, and yet there's no account. He wants that, and it's not just him, but the Finance Committee and Ghanaians want an account of what that money has been used for. Are you hiding behind the Constitution to not account to Ghanaians?
You see, for a government that has come in, led by a president that has set laws, additional laws, and amended some of our existing laws to deal with corruption and corruption-related issues. I don't think now there's any information that anybody wants from a public institution that they can get, especially with the passing of the Right to Information Act. And corruption itself has been moved, was amended. The Criminal Offences Act was amended, moving corruption from a misdemeanor to felony. So I think it will be a bit exaggerated if you say the finance minister is refusing to account to the people. The Parliament of Ghana has the Public Accounts Committee that is supposed to use the Auditor General's report to probe and make sure that the money that Ghanaians pay, the taxes that we pay, and are budgeted against items are used for that. The issue at hand now is the minority wanting a bipartisan committee and the majority saying it's not necessary. We already have a bipartisan committee that is available to do that. I think committees at Parliament, with all due respect, should be allowed to do their work without some of these gymnastics.
Lawyer, are you being partisan as a party, as a minority in Parliament, when it comes to asking for a bipartisan committee to probe into the expenditure of COVID-19 funds?
Well, a very good morning to you and good morning to Laratu and everybody else. I have a very, very different take on the matter. I believe strongly that the Constitution, the standing orders of Parliament, clearly delineates the duties in Parliament. I have no doubt that the Speaker of Parliament at any given time is the sole judge on admissibility. So in terms of what motions are admissible, what papers are tabled and laid before the House, etc. And I believe that we heard the minority leader indicate clearly that this was a motion that had actually been advertised, it had been properly laid before the House and admitted by the Speaker of Parliament. He also mentioned that this was actually the second time that the House was experiencing a situation of this kind, and that first and foremost it undermines the authority of the Speaker. It also creates a very wrong impression. He also believed that this was also born out of bad faith. And you remember sometimes it is even the commentary that is actually run by the First Deputy Speaker. You can tell there's a certain mischief, there's a certain look in his eye. Sometimes he even has these funny little winks and a very, very sarcastic smile most often than not. I personally think that enormous criticism has actually greeted the current Parliament. Indeed, in 2021, when this Parliament was actually sworn into office, we saw that there was enormous chaos that actually welcomed or ushered in the speakership of the Honorable Alban Sumana Bagbin. We also recall that in recent times there have been very serious scuffles, and I know that many, many well-meaning Ghanaians have spoken at length about Parliament and the chaos and oftentimes the fisticuffs that we've witnessed. And it's become almost like a hotbed for punches and punch lines, and there's enormous suspicion, a very deep suspicion. Sometimes I would like to surmise, I guess, that this has all been occasioned by the fact that right from the onset, I think that government was largely embarrassed by the outright, inability to totally win the majority outrightly in the House. And so had tried initially to create the impression that despite the numbers, they will still hold sway. And then finally they got an opposition speaker. And then eventually, what a hung Parliament basically connotes is that nobody really has a clear majority. And that where matters are to be put in a vote, where there's a head count, it will be difficult for you to have a convincing number to move through your motions. So certainly, maybe also because, like the Speaker said, this has never been experienced. We probably don't even know what to expect. We don't understand what to do. But yes, this is a government that enjoyed a very comfortable majority and suddenly has to operate on this very slim, almost one number only, and certainly doesn't know how else to operate. So yes, there have been these attempts to try and bulldoze their way by all these lengthy debates, and sometimes even hoping that the Speaker will not be in the seat so they can have the First Deputy Speaker and then push through some of these things. Look, where you have the situation that we have, I think that Ghanaians actually got tired of the majority having its way. Therefore, they returned to Parliament a number of people that would force a certain negotiation. I think that if you continue to follow discourse by scholars, especially political scientists, they will tell you that gradually Ghanaians are becoming very discerning. We are totally exhausted by the seeming disagreements. And I believe that Parliament being the main platform where all of us have our representatives, we will be expecting a certain modicum of acceptance of the fact that nobody really has the numbers to bulldoze away. So even if the minority wants to bring 50 motions and the sole judge on that occasion has admitted the said motions, what is your difficulty? Why should this generate all this rancor? And why should the Speaker suo motu admit a particular motion and then the very next day, or even a few hours later, you find the Deputy Speaker take the seat and then totally reverse everything?
He ought not to have admitted it based on Article 187. That says that there's already a standing committee, there's already a select committee, and the Public Accounts Committee falls under these.
Do you remember?
So you have to go through the right process and allow the Auditor General to do his job, send a report to Parliament and debate.
I have a totally different opinion. And I think I'd like to stand on the very initial comments that I made, that there's a need for them to find a way to work together, first and foremost. That secondly, everybody is getting tired with this back and forth. The third thing I'd like to put on record is that I am sure that the Speaker is a repository of what the rules, what the rights, what the legislation say about his role as a speaker. And I'm sure you do know that he has tried very hard to walk this very tight rope of trying very hard to be neutral, basically. So certainly, he would not appreciate this level of bad faith. And I'm sure you recall what happened with the budget, even with the e-levy. There were conversations even in the aftermath that the e-levy had been passed and that people should stop bickering about it and the debates must end. Why would you do that when you know that the speaker was on a different page and that the speaker was not gone forever, that he'll be returning to preside over matters in the House? In case of the Sputnik investigation, for example, it was the same process. Why did they not debate that one? In fact, in the aftermath, if you remember, they even asked why the health minister was still at post, and I'm sure you heard the minority spokesperson on health, the Honorable Akando, spoke at length about this matter. You know, Bella, I think that it is time for all of us to listen to the voices of reason. It is even awkward to have the first deputy speaker and the speaker always speaking from different sides of the hymn book. I think it leaves a very bad impression.
Rather? I mean, they belong to two sides of government.
When it comes to the speakership, I think that sometimes you have a certain modicum of certainty that speakers would sometimes defer to one another, show utmost good faith, show a certain fiduciary relationships, show a certain bonding. Even before they arrive, they would probably have had some conversations prior to these motions being tabled, etc. I think this level of deep partisanship, even on the speaker's bench, it actually doesn't leave a very good taste in the mouth of many people who follow these events. And I think that we ought to, and I agree entirely with Speaker Bagbin that this must actually end and end immediately. Look, most of the things we discuss are matters of mutual interest. We are currently in a space where our finance minister, and this is not Joyce Bauer speaking, has admitted that the country is utterly broke. Every other person watching us knows that we have deep challenges with our economy, considering the level of public debt at over 340 billion cedis and counting.
344 at the moment.
Absolutely, and rising. Look at the interest rates. We have challenges almost at every level regarding the economy. So when you come to Parliament and they approve 1.2 billion cedis for you, and then they find that you've spent close to 8 billion cedis, I believe that they have a right to question and to seek for responses. If they mention the Auditor General, for example, we all know the Auditor General has already presented his report to Parliament. Are we going to then invite him to undertake a special audit of what has transpired in terms of COVID?
Would that be wrong?
Well, I wouldn't know. I don't serve in Parliament, but at least I've heard what the Speaker has said. And nobody so far has come out to tell us that what the Speaker says is wrong. They have come under many other provisions, but nobody has said that there's any other person beyond the Speaker to solely admit these motions. And I think that should seal the debate. There are some matters we cannot sit here and debate forever because these are matters that are factually correct and there are laws to back them. Parliament operates on its own very unique standing orders. They have never been in doubt, even though we've heard about proposals to try and amend some of the provisions in the standing orders. They are still working with the existing standing orders. And you all know it. You understand. But I think that in the interest of accountability, as many as the Speaker can admit, why would people not be willing to have bipartisan conversations along these lines?
Do you think they're hiding behind something and avoiding accounting to Ghanaians?
Without pretending to figure out just what is going on, I can sense that there is enormous damage currently being done to government in terms of its profligate spending. So certainly persons who serve as anchors, basically like parliamentarians for government, would try as much as possible to reduce that impression. They would try very hard to find ways to resolve these matters. And I do know that, look, even following the Public Accounts Committee hearings, leaves enormous challenges for government, for example, in terms of spending. Look at how much is lost. Monies that are recoverable as against those that are not. Monies owed by one state institution to another, and outstanding recoverables and all of that. They total almost 12 billion Ghana cedis. So certainly, we do know that there is enormous waste in the system, and government has promised itself that it will do everything to pass this e-levy. It has become almost like a panacea to most of our challenges, but nobody is buying it. So what do you expect them to do at the moment? I think that, look, we should stop these gimmicks. Let's stop the mudslinging. I think that they're all very honorable members and they should show utmost respect, not just for the Constitution, but of course for the discerning members of the public who follow these issues. I have no doubt in my mind that there is this deeply partisan division that is currently going on. It certainly doesn't make government look good.
But if you look into the 2022 budget, page 273, they have given an account of the COVID-19 alleviation program and, of course, giving you how much was expended. If you go into the 2020 budget as well, which is what I projected, 2021, pardon me, they've also stated that. And so if you want details of what has been, how much has been expended, you have it in the budget. Why do you want to set up a committee again?
You remember when we witnessed the health minister appear before the committee, despite the fact that there had been some budgetary reports regarding what processes led to the procurement of those vaccines and Frontiers and their services at the airport. You realize that most of his responses, he found himself wanting. In fact, he himself admitted that because of the exigency of the situation, he didn't actually have control over all the matters that had to take place because of the pandemic. So it is obvious that sometimes what we report may not necessarily expose the nitty-gritty that members of the public ought to know. In any case, how many people have access to the budget to go and nitpick on exactly what has been accounted for and what has not? Indeed, we've also been told that even for the same period, at least 32 million was spent on meetings to discuss what to do about the pandemic. The Agenda 111, for example, you and I both know that they are yet to deliver even on it. I know a hospital that was actually demolished and they're still waiting to be rebuilt. And I've heard a lot of people complain about that aspect because now there's enormous pressure on the one facility that exists. There's so many things that are currently going on that simply do not augur well for our nascent democracy. And I think irrespective of where we stand in terms of our political, ideological exposures, we should admit that some things cannot continue. And I believe that Ghanaians made this very, very clear, that they expect Parliament to come to the middle, learn to jaw, learn to negotiate, learn to facilitate a certain discourse, which is largely geared towards the interest of what is good for us as a people. And I believe that no matter how many questions are asked and how they are asked or how many motions are tabled, look, it cannot be too much for Parliament to do. And you heard the frustrations that the Speaker himself expressed. Have you watched the deliberations lately? The numbers even on the floor. Most people are absent. So you ask yourself, what exactly is going on? You understand? He complained about a lot of processes that are currently not being respected, about standing orders that are being totally thrown out of the window. I think we're dealing with adults, at least individuals who have put themselves up and been elected into this august house. I have no doubt in my mind that everybody, and I remember the elder statesman, Mr. Kwame Pienim, who posited that he was not going to refer to any of them as an honorable member because of their attitude, the fights and the fistcuffs, and he was even expecting that Parliament will wholeheartedly apologize to the good people of Ghana. I've heard individuals who have tried to make amends and given some assurances, but I'm yet to hear that there is a certain bipartisan attempt to even apologize and try as much as possible to promise us, or at least give the assurance that we will henceforth work together. Look, those seats being thrown about and fistcuffs and the military running into the chamber and all those things, they leave enormous confusion in the minds of many well-meaning people.
Let me come back to Lerato, because you're asking Ghanaians to pay e-levy. And of course, we've heard from the minister. He says we cannot afford to go back to IMF. And we're in a dire situation at the moment with regards to economy. So we need e-levy if you want jobs for the youth, you want roads and all of that. And yet, when you look back at when the Appointments Committee was interrogating the then Health Minister, and Foreign Affairs Minister, the Attorney General, even asking something as basic as how Frontiers Healthcare was able to even get, that deal to run tests at the airports, they all said they had no idea about it. Does it not then beg the question that if you're not exactly in charge of some of these things, you should at least account to us to a certain extent how much you spent before you even come back to us and tell us that we should pay a lot more money as taxes so you can use that to develop the nation?
Bella, even before I go on with the question you've asked, the budget statement and economic policy is a public document. It's accessible to everyone. But talking about e-levy and all the issues, this is a government that picked our economy that was virtually in the hands of IMF at about some 3.4 growth rate from 2017. Managed the economy, brought it up to an average of 7 points, a little over 7.
It was 6.9.
Well,
at the time it was projected to grow at 6.9. Yes.
Yes. Then 2020, we had this pandemic hit us in 2020. That's March 2020. That was when we recorded our first case. Bear in mind that the budget for 2020 was ready in November 2019. And for budget purposes, most institutions that input into the budget had already stipulated what their plans were and what they were going to do, whatever allocations will be given to them after the appropriation is passed by Parliament. It was passed all right. Then March 2020, getting to the end of first quarter, we have a pandemic. At least we all know that when you go to health facilities, health-related institutions, they'll probably have budgeted for a certain quantum of consumables that we are now using on a daily basis to combat COVID and protect ourselves from this virus. So in March 2020, there has to be a whole new thinking. And if you remember very well, His Excellency the President made an emphatic statement that he knows how to bring the economy back to life. I'm paraphrasing. But he doesn't know how to bring people back to life. It's going to be difficult, but we'll steer clear and bring the economy back on course. We went under a lockdown for 2 weeks, and we all know the impact. It reduced our expenditure. It increased our expenditure by some 14 million and reduced our revenue by some 11 million. That's already an issue. Your revenue is already way down because people were now figuring out across the world how to deal with this pandemic, this virus that nobody knew its shape and character. One moment there's a remedy for it, another moment we started with it being not being airborne, then came out that it was airborne. There were lots of uncertainties about it. Businesses suffered, but at least for the public sector, there were over 700,000 workers that we had. Nobody got affected. Right. We had a lot of issues. MBSSI had to come in to support SMEs with facilities. The vulnerable had to be fed.
Even that, the figure has been contested. That 54 million Ghana cedis for hot meals and dry food packages.
Were people giving food or not? Were people giving food or not?
But that is why we need a breakdown. If you say were people giving food or not, we need a breakdown of exactly how much everything cost.
When you look on your screen, the line items are there. The cost is there. Did people get free electricity at an extent? For those who were Lifeline customers, it was totally free for them. For those who were at that point in time, in all the stress that we were going through, did those people have to struggle to get funds to pay their electricity?
We were told it was free
at that time.
Only to come back in the new year, and now we're told we had to pay back.
But if it's free, who said it was free? It was the government of the day who pays for those facilities and has the mandate to say, I'm giving it to you at no cost at that moment. It was government. Who funds government is the citizen.
Yeah, but you did not communicate that. You made it sound like it was free.
At that point,
you did not give Ghanaians, you know, the perception that they were going to have to pay back eventually.
Today, if you want to reload your power, you have to take money, either via Momo, via their app, or go to a vendor and make a purchase. Right. At that point in time where we are all under distress, did you have to sit down with all that was going on, think about how to take money or transfer money on buy purchase from the app or go to a vendor and buy? At that moment, it was. Who funds government? Government has to pay. Government was the one that you give your monies to and said, at this point in time, I'm going to reduce your burden and let you enjoy
in the
water.
interim, which is what you didn't tell us. Did you deceive Ghanaians by making them think that you were actually giving them freebies when in actual fact you had plans of retrieving those monies back eventually?
At that point in time, did you pay?
So did you deceive Ghanaians?
As we said now,
did you deceive Ghanaians at that point?
As we said now, Bella, for the months that we enjoyed, so for the about 6 months, that those of us who were above the lifeline paid 50% for electricity. And those of us who have access to Ghana water supply enjoy free water. Did you get an accumulated bill for the 6 months that you didn't pay the 50%?
You came back and introduced some other levies. There's a 1% COVID levy that we're paying back, and we're told that even that is a part of it is for vaccines.
Is there anybody?
So we are paying back.
Is there anybody who has been given an accumulated bill to pay outright for the 6 months?
So if I've not been given the bill and I'm paying eventually, it doesn't mean that I'm not paying.
But who funds?
But we were told, we heard from the information minister,
who funds government?
That who said it was free?
Who funds
eventually
government?
Who's going to pay?
Who pays our bills?
But then you don't tell Ghanaians, I'm giving you free water and free electricity, or
I've asked a simple question. Have you been given an accumulated bill?
You don't have to be given an accumulated bill.
Exactly.
No, you don't have to for you to know
government
that you are paying back.
Who said it was free?
You said it was free. Your
Who said it was free? Government said it was free.
Yeah.
Who pays our bills? Who makes sure we get health facilities? Who makes sure we get clean water?
So it is our fault
Who makes sure we get
that when you said free, we were
at that point in time? Did you pay for it? Have you been given an accumulated bill to pay for it?
But it's credit. You don't pay in the beginning. You pay for it eventually. You should have made us aware that I'm giving you this in the meantime. Eventually, when the dust settles, you'll pay back. Why didn't you communicate that to Ghanaians? Because it looks as if you did that only to win elections, only to come back and then say that, okay, so this is probably what it is.
That would be a bit wrong to say that we just wanted to win elections. But
that's what Ghanaians
at that point in time,
that you deceived
when
them. People
were under distress and the whole world was wondering how to go about it, so late. Even the most advanced economies are suffering from the pandemic. We are making some margin. Even in that state, we made some marginal growth. You know, so when all these things, the point is, were people giving food? Did we enjoy the 50% electricity then? Did we enjoy free water then? We did. Who pays our bill? Government does. Who funds government? It's the citizenry. You are talking about e-levy today.
So citizens should have known.
We are talking about e-levy today.
Citizens should have known. Is that what you're saying? Citizens should have known.
Nobody has been given, to my best of knowledge, nobody has been given an accumulated bill to pay for the water we enjoyed over the 6 years.
Because if you tell me nobody has been given a bill, it doesn't mean that if I'm paying later, I need to be given an accumulated bill.
The government that you've entrusted, you've given your trust in to manage your economy and make sure that you're comfortable. Nobody denies the fact that we are in difficult times. Nobody denies the fact that things are difficult by the fact that we're faced with something that nobody saw coming. We've been in this country that we've had crisis. We've been in this country that we stayed in darkness for close to 4 years. Did any business get any support from government? Were we ever said that, okay, we're going to give you some time to just use electricity over some time and all that. We haven't. We find ourselves in very dire it's a challenging moment for me. Nobody denies it, and I don't think anybody gets and
account to Ghanaians. I mean, even with
you
Frontiers,
yourself sitting here, was it not
even
in the
with
20?
Frontiers Healthcare,
was it not in
till
the
date? We don't have an explanation as to how Frontiers Healthcare
the
was
transport
able
minister
to get
who the
that deal.
airport company
We only
provided some
Ghana
details.
Airport Company Limited only made just about $1.1 million from about $17.5 million that was accumulated.
The Ghana Airport
for Frontiers
Company
Healthcare
falls under Ministry
during the
of
time
Transport,
when we were
right?
testing. We still do not have the breakdown as to how Frontiers even got the deal till now. We're asking about that. We're asking about Sputnik V and the controversy surrounding those vaccines that we bought for almost double the price. Till date, we have not been given breakdowns of it. So if Ghanaians are asking that accounts for all those ones before you even ask us to pay a lot more on taxes, is that not fair? Do we have to wait for you to use the Constitution as a reason to not account to us?
Nobody says it's unfair for the person who pays the taxes to ask for what the taxes are being used for. And that is what I think the e-levy conversation should even be bordering on. We've heard over the months you've overborrowed. Even if we want to go into the percentages of borrowing, we have our competitors borrowing over 1,000% if we want to do. They picked it from 90 million and shot it to about 120 something million, over 1,000%. You know, but nobody justifies the fact. And here now, with all that is happening, nations are looking more to domestic resource mobilization than going out. We've heard a lot. You've overborrowed. We are in a lot of debt. We don't know. Now, e-levy has come as a homegrown solution to solve some of our fundamental problems.
Is that really the case? Is that really the case? There have been other options that have been given to government. So if you say it's homegrown, there are other options that have been given to government on how they can generate revenue internally without further burdening the Ghanaian.
We went in 2020 to the polls and voted for His Excellency the President based on the good works and how well he had steered our economy from 2017 to 2019. And for those who say we haven't seen anything, I believe if for nothing at all, we also saw the over 300 ambulances that were brought to strengthen the ambulance service.
One of those ambulances were being used to pick up cement. We saw that video.
Bella,
there are still instances where people are told that secure a bed at the hospital before the ambulance comes and pick you up. We saw a video of a man who was crying so badly because he lost his wife. Why? Because he had to pay an amount of money for his wife to be transported from his region to another region so that his wife can, secure health care. He was broken. And so if you bring in the conversation about ambulances that have been provided, is it really serving the Ghanaian public like it should? Because Ghanaians are being asked to secure a bed or to pay some amount of money before the ambulance picks them up?
Over 300 ambulances were procured. One out of 300 and something. And nowhere will I sit and say someone losing their wife.
But that's not just one instance, by the way.
Losing their relatives is something that anybody should, is not something that should happen to anybody.
That's not one instance, by the way, not to interject, but that's not just one instance. There are a lot of Ghanaians who have complained that when you call the ambulance service, I'm just saying, and I apologize when I was interjecting, I was just telling you that if you say it's one instance out of many, apologies, but if you say it's one instance out of many, that's unfair to Ghanaians who are saying that every time we call the ambulance service, or many times when we call them, they ask us to secure a bed even before the ambulance picks us up.
Let me repeat what I said. I said there were over 300 ambulances that were procured. And you're talking about one that was used to carry cement. Right. And the ambulance service, the institution responsible for these ambulances, came out with a statement, did an investigation into it. I didn't know we were going to talk about it. I would have inquired about it, but they went ahead. You see, we should also be able to hold institutions and ourselves responsible for some of the decisions we do. Who was driving the ambulance? It was a Ghanaian. Who was loading the cement? It was a Ghanaian. Whose money was used to procure that ambulance? It was Ghanaian taxpayers' money. If you open your business, you see, that attitude of us treating government institutions and treating government properties as if it's theirs and ours is one of our problems. If you use your money to go and buy a property directly, you take care of it. So you also need to view all these things that are being done, all these things that are being procured are from the monies that we pay. It's our property. So how we use them, how we treat them is also important. And these are some of the things as citizens we should be averting our minds to.
Okay.
It's not about someone sitting pretty somewhere as government. It's us who makes the government, who votes for people to come into it. You don't vote for people and sit down and think that magic should work. So nobody will say that citizens shouldn't ask for accountability. But when there are procedures, there are laws that we've all agreed on, based on the fact that we went to the polls and voted for members of parliament to go and represent you and I, don't want to go according to what it is and wants to go round other ways. I don't know whether for populism or for electoral gains to make it seem as if someone is doing untoward. We are in difficult times, no doubt about that.
Let's bring Lawyer in.
Do things the right way.
All right. Lawyer, what do you make of the statements that she has
Well, I believe that
put forth
very,
so
very
far?
innocuous arguments, and I think I totally realize where she's coming from. There's a deep sense of insensitivity whenever I hear government's own communicators speak. And I believe the Larato should also know that radio is still one of the main mediums of disseminating information in Ghana, and that most people would probably not see any appendixes to a budget, but they will listen to radio and hear us analyze. It is why most often than not we all refer to these figures, etc. This is a government that received at least 65% of oil revenue from 2011 to 2020. This is a government that has currently borrowed in excess of 340 billion Ghana cedis. This is a government also that in recent times, in the 2020 budget, Office of Government Machinery has received 500 million cedis more than what they received in the previous budget. This is the same government that has a president spending 4.9 million Ghana cedis on luxurious travel when he could have spent that money on maybe paying NAPCO workers, etc. You see, I currently don't even get running water in my home. I have to make provision to buy water all the time. I'm particularly delighted that Larato has clearly responded to this particular concern. And I wasn't asking or criticizing, but you asked the question and she responded. That suddenly we are paying for whatever little freebies we received in the course of the pandemic. The only persons who have made monies are those currently in charge of protecting the public purse, who have woefully failed to do so. One, the wastage, the lack of respect. And when you hear sometimes some of the angles we choose to debate on, you marvel. At the time when people were calling on frontiers to even reduce the cost of tests so that people in Ghana could also test and at least work to avert a looming disaster, nobody minded us. Indeed, if he who pays the piper will certainly call the tune, irrespective of who is in government. Yes, Ghanaians went out there and duly elected President Akufo-Addo. The same Ghanaians have told President Akufo-Addo that he should stop expending taxpayers' money on private jet travel and focus on what is at home. The same people are telling you, and I think you will tell your forebears and your leaders, that the good people of Ghana are tired of the waste. That the good people of Ghana also know that in the course of the pandemic, this government has received huge sums of money from the World Bank, from the IMF. And all that Parliament is asking for is that you account for how these monies were expended. Yes, so you're giving us a figure that 32 million was spent on COVID meetings. On what and on what? That is what we are asking for. You have also told us that you have actually gone out there to spend about almost 4.9 million on presidential travels. We are asking you to tell us what and what you paid for. You have told us happily that Office of Government Machinery received an extra 500 million. What and what did you expend those amounts of money on? I think these are very legitimate questions that people are asking. You see, it is very rich when you have these conversations and hear people speak about what happened in the past. Certainly the money is here. And certainly we came in to protect the public purse. And certainly President Akufo-Addo was so wealthy that he would never even be likened to someone who would use taxpayers' money to pay for his trips and his travel. Indeed, in South Africa, there was a probe on how COVID funds were spent. The South African Health Minister, my sister, has resigned. In the United Kingdom, there was a probe, and you've heard about the challenges to do with how fraudsters even attack the resources and stole same. Indeed, in Ghana, we are also a democracy like everybody else. If our people want a probe into how COVID resources were expended, then so be it. And remember, the World Bank itself told us that even prior to the pandemic arriving, we were already in 5% backwards in terms of our interest payments. So these are not conversations that we are having because we are in opposition or we are a majority. These are very salient issues that the good people of Ghana are asking for and demanding responses to. Certainly, Seftepe and Mahama screamed themselves hoarse on what homegrown solutions were. And I'm particularly delighted this morning and elated that suddenly we know that there are things that are called homegrown solutions. Indeed, why have we collateralized ESLA? About at least 40% of it. Why have we also done same to the GET Fund? About another 40%. So when the taxpayers put their monies into the GET Fund kitty and into the ESLA kitty, how much do we really get? Most of it is gone already. Who are the people who go and actually serve as consultants for these huge Eurobond transactions? They are there in the Ministry of Finance. Let's ask the Minister for Finance how much his companies have actually made from these transactions. Let's ask the other Deputy Minister for Finance how much they have made. Look, there is something in company law called piercing the veil of incorporation, where you go behind a veil to lift it to find out what is behind. That is all that our parliamentarians are asking for. And listen here, it is not just MPP or NDC parliamentarians who are asking these questions. Even within the MPP, there are individuals who actually want people to respond legitimately.
But they haven't come out to say anything.
But you know how it operates around here. We are very partisan. The lines are very clearly drawn. So certainly you don't expect... Look, it is why most people have always wondered why we lost all these independent candidates who were in parliament at the time. Because I remember Madam Hawa Yakubu in particular, who could hold government to ransom, even as an individual female in parliament. Those are the debates we miss. Maybe today, if we had other independents, they would stand in the middle and call for these probes, call for this motion to be heard, and demand answers. You know, I always shudder to reduce this conversation to what the MPP wants and what the NDC wants. If President Akufo-Addo had all these things and represent all the things we talk about, what does he need a private jet for? I'm sure he'd have arrived with his own private jet. He'd have arrived with his own bulletproof vehicles. He'd arrive with his own armored vehicles. He would not need taxpayers to do anything for him. Recently, we even heard about how spouses of the president and vice president were actually even being proposed to receive stipends from the state. You know, look.
They called it back anyway.
Well, they had no options. There was a huge uproar. It generated enormous opprobrium and debate.
But even in that,
the
first ladies from previous governments had also received some stipends.
But there was never a conversation where a whole committee was set up to debate these things, because these are offices that are naturally appendages also of the government or seat of government. So I'm sure when you talk about the 500 million that they've received, some of it will go to funding the activities of these spouses who actually do a lot of social interventions for the good people of Ghana. And nobody has complained about that. You know, I think that even some of these conversations have only come about because of how other spouses were treated in the past. I recall on public platforms where we had leaders of the then opposition screaming how the former First Lady, Mrs. Mahama, had actually been awarding contracts from her office. Nobody has apologized for that. People will even tell you these are all political debates, and sometimes on political platforms we say all of these things. You know, I don't think that we are here to lay, you know, to pontificate or moralize about anything. And I believe strongly that anybody who loves democracy will be interested in us probing this wanton dissipation of public funds, even before we have a conversation about the E-Levy.
Okay.
I mean, why would we have a whole Minister for Finance almost in tears telling us that if we earn how many millions and it comes to us for just 15,000, we should accept it? When he was traveling on that Eurobond tour and coming and holding the Kenke and Wache parties, didn't we know there was a need for us to focus more on homegrown solutions?
He said we're not in normal times. COVID-19 messed up everything.
I said there's a World Bank report. I haven't heard them go out there and fight the World Bank. That we're actually struggling to pay 5% of our interest even before the pandemic struck.
Okay.
And you know that even in the pandemic, Burkina Faso has grown by 5.7%. You see, where prudent measures are put in place, you can tell that the government is making every effort to reduce spending. But like I said, when you look at the budget in terms of Office of Government Machinery, who is refusing to spend so that we can benefit?
Okay. Our time is up, unfortunately. I was hoping we could go into the Komenda Sugar Factory announcement that the president made yesterday. Hopefully tomorrow we can get into that. But this morning I've been speaking to Laratu Musa Saka. She's a member of the NPP communications team, and also lawyer Joyce Muktari Bawa. And she is a special aide to former President John Dramani Mahama, a former Deputy Minister of Transport as well. And so keep watching. This is TV3 New Day. We have sports, we have entertainment, and so much more coming up. Join us on social media as well. The hashtag is TV3 New Day. Thank you so much, ladies.